Welcome to Max and Meon Movies.
Hello, everyone.
You are joining us for what is, I think, easily the most talked about, most intense, and just most chaotically structured horror film of the year.
Oh, without a doubt.
We are talking about Zach Cregger's box office behemoth, Weapons.
And we have gone through all the sources, the critical takes, director interviews,
Yeah.
everything to really figure out why this movie became such a phenomenon.
It really did. But before we jump right into all of that, we have a quick but very mandatory pre-roll call to action for you.
It's very important.
It is. If you're enjoying what we do here, please just take a second to hit that like button.
And subscribe to the channel.
And if you've already seen Weapons, and I know a lot of you have, we really want to know what you thought.
Definitely. Leave your rating in the comments below.
But more importantly, tell us why you gave it that score. We genuinely live for that chaotic discussion, and for a film this divisive, well, it's essential.
Absolutely.
So this is just a monster of a movie, both, literally and figuratively. The director, Zach Cregger, he came into this with just enormous anticipation after the massive success of Barbarian.
Right. That was such a sleeper hit. It really proved he could deliver genuine scares and these completely shocking pivots in tone.
So the script for Weapons just instantly became like Hollywood gold. It sparked this intense, industry-rattling bidding war.
And the sources really confirm just how crazy that war was. I mean, New Line Cinema finally locked it down, but with a staggering $38 million offer.
$38 million, that's huge.
It is. And that deal guaranteed Cregger a $10 million fee, and this is the crucial part, final cut privileges, pending test screenings, of course.
That kind of investment in an original horror script it's almost unheard of.
It really is.
And that investment paid off right away. This wasn't a slow burn like Barbarian. It was a box office smash right out of the gate.
It opened to, what, $43.5 million?
Yeah, and it's just climbed and climbed since then, already passing $151 million domestically.
It's a proper cultural event.
Which makes our job today all the more necessary, I think, to really distill the context, the meaning, and all the arguments swirling around this chaotic masterpiece.
Or chaotic mess, depending on who you ask.
Exactly. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So let's start with just raw, immediate reactions. Forget the critics, forget the box office for a second. When those credits finally rolled, what was your most immediate, honest feeling? For me, it was this really bizarre mix. It was like exhausted, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 hours.
Yeah, that sustained tension.
Exactly. But then it was followed by this nervous, almost relieved burst of dark laughter. It felt like I just survived something.
That is the perfect description of the Cregger experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what really surprised me, reading through the critical source material, was the emotional weight this one carried.
More so than Barbarian.
Oh, much more. Barbarian was shocking and it was horrifying, for sure. But Weapons felt denser. It was profoundly sad, I thought, and just loaded with this genuine creeping dread.
Right.
The feeling I got was that the film was just less interested in the immediate jump scare,
Yeah.
It was much more focused on the psychological fallout.
And that fallout starts with the premise itself, which is, it's so simple, but it is utterly terrifying as a hook.
The whole thing just pivots on the disappearance of 17 children from a single classroom.
All on the same night,
Yeah.
at exactly 2:17 a.m.
And the key, I think, to the film's whole unsettling tone is the sheer visual poetry of how they disappear.
Oh, the doorbell camera footage?
Yes. The sources describe it perfectly. You see the kids running out of their separate homes. They're not screaming. They're not struggling.
No, they're moving in this creepy, synchronized way.
Exactly. Arms held out of their sides in this almost ritualistic, perfect flying V formation.
That imagery alone just sets the movie apart from anything else. It completely defies typical horror logic. Like you said, they weren't being chased. They weren't running away from a killer or some monster.
They were running to something.
Voluntarily.
Yeah.
In this bizarre, coordinated movement. It removes the agency of the victims in a way that is immediately so destabilizing for the viewer.
And here's the really critical detail Cregger uses to force you, the audience, into that emotional thematic core. The film doesn't start right after it happens.
No, it starts 1 month later.
One whole month. We just completely bypass the frantic, early, let's find the kids investigative stage.
And the sources all highlight this as Cregger's structural genius. By jumping forward a month, he just sidesteps all the inevitable procedural stuff that can really bog down these missing child stories.
He gets to skip the police press conferences, the search parties in the woods, all of that.
And he jumps straight to the thematic core, the deep-seated chaos and the total disintegration of the community.
Precisely. By the time we arrive in this fictional town of Maybrook, it's already spiraling. It is drowning in suspicion and fear and self-destruction.
So the immediate mystery isn't where are the kids?
No. It's what does this sudden, inexplicable absence do to the frail, flawed adults who are left behind?
The teacher, the cop, the grieving father.
Yeah. It establishes so early on that the real, enduring horror isn't just some supernatural thing. It's the trauma and the suspicion that just fracture the people who are supposed to be the protectors.
That dread of community collapse is, it's palpable from the very first scene. You see how frayed the edges of their lives are, how quickly they just turn on each other.
It's a brilliant way to weaponize suburban anxiety.
It really is. Okay, so let's transition to the structure, because this is where the film really earns that epic label and where Kreger makes some truly audacious choices.
Yeah, he completely throws a linear narrative out the window.
Completely. The film is broken into, 5 major nonlinear character-centric chapters.
Plus the perspective of Alex, the sole surviving student.
It really throws you off balance. Just when you think you're settling into Justine, the teacher's story, boom, the movie whips you back in time, or it shifts perspective entirely to Archer, the father.
To Paul, the conflicted cop. It's an ensemble piece that really demands your full attention.
It does.
And that ensemble approach is 100% intentional. Kreger's been very open in his interviews about his cinematic influences here.
Right.
He really sees Weapons as a sprawling epic. And he specifically cites Paul Thomas Anderson's 1999 masterpiece, Magnolia, as a major structural inspiration.
And you can see the DNA of Magnolia immediately.
Oh, yeah?
It's another huge ensemble piece. It's focused on these intersecting, emotionally lost, and just profoundly messy people who are all dealing with some kind of massive existential trauma.
Exactly. The source material quotes Kreger admiring how Magnolia was, and this is his phrase, totally proud to be an epic movie and to be a little bit messy.
And that word messy, that's the key.
It's everything. He also drew heavily from the non-linear chapter-based structure of Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction.
And that, I think, leads us directly into the most debated, most discussed aspect of this entire movie.
The plot holes.
The plot holes. We have to address them because they are numerous, and both critics and audiences just seized on them right away.
They're hard to ignore.
I saw so many comments online asking the same things. Why didn't every single Ring camera in the neighborhood capture the children running to the exact same place?
That's the big one.
It's huge. And why did the police apparently fail to notice that Alex's parents were basically catatonic, just incapacitated for weeks, especially when this is supposed to be this high-profile national case?
And where was the national media? Why wasn't Maybrook turned into a modern-day Salem with news vans on every corner?
These logic issues are just glaring if you go in expecting a standard, competent police procedural.
And you raised a great point earlier. When you introduce a realistic element, like a Ring camera in the first 5 minutes, you are establishing a rule for the audience.
All right.
And when that rule doesn't lead to the obvious evidence, it can feel like a fundamental, really frustrating failure of the writing. Like it's only there to prolong the mystery.
I'll admit, I still kind of lean toward that frustration. If I'm supposed to suspend my disbelief for, witches and blood ritual, I need the human element, the investigation, to feel grounded and consistent. It needs to make sense.
But this is where we get to Kreger's defense. And it's really the core intellectual concept of the film. It requires us to completely reconsider how we're engaging with the story.
Okay.
He admitted there are major plot holes all over this. He said he even tried mapping out a perfect calendar to make all the events line up flawlessly, but he found it was impossible.
So his defense?
His defense is that the inconsistencies are not mistakes, they are intentional. They're a signal that the events we are seeing are subjective.
Intentional messiness. You have to explain that because for a lot of people, that just sounds like the ultimate artistic cop-out when a story doesn't add up.
Well, it all hinges on this concept of subjective truth, filtered through unreliable narrators.
Okay.
The events that you're watching are fundamentally influenced by the psychological and emotional state of the character whose chapter you're currently in.
So let's go back to that Pulp Fiction comparison.
The famous example, right? The opening diner robbery scene.
Right.
In the film's opening, when Honey Bunny screams, she delivers one specific line of dialogue. But later, when we revisit that exact same moment from Jules Winfield's perspective,
her dialogue is slightly different.
Slightly, almost imperceptibly different. And Kreger confirmed this is the required reading for the non-congruent parts of weapons.
So the police failures, the timing glitches, the weird apathy of the neighborhood.
They're all signals that what you're seeing isn't some omniscient objective reality. It's a story filtered through the trauma or the guilt or the limited knowledge of Justine or Paul or Archer.
Okay, so if we're watching Paul the cop's version of events, the narrative might subconsciously prioritize his professional screw-ups or his personal distractions.
Like his affair with Justine.
Right, and so it glosses over or just fails to notice crucial details, like the disturbing catatonic state of Alex's parents, because his focus is completely elsewhere.
Precisely. And that subjective viewpoint dramatically alters how we understand characters and events. A key example is when Paul sees Justine at the bar. In his point of view, the camera really lingers on her. It presents her as being much sexier, more overtly provocative.
So his own guilt and desire are coloring his memory of that interaction.
Exactly. It makes her an object of his fixation, not just a distressed colleague. It's not objective reality.
You know, that elevates the film from just a horror flick into something much more like a piece of literary cinema. It's using unreliable narration as a core structural device.
It is.
But we have to ask the big question. This is what makes the film so polarizing. Does Cregger's intentional messiness actually succeed? Does it add intrigue and thematic depth?
Or does it ultimately undermine the mystery and the horror for the average viewer who is just expecting a coherent, solvable plot?
That is the dividing line.
It is. For cinephiles, that ambiguity is rewarding. It invites you to watch it again, to do the source analysis. It turns the viewing experience into a puzzle box.
But for the person who just bought a ticket for a high-stakes horror movie?
For them, the intentional logistical holes, they just dilute the suspension of disbelief. They can leave you feeling cheated when the plot fails these simple reality checks.
It's a huge creative risk. And hey, if you are enjoying us getting into the weeds on the analysis and sources surrounding weapons, just make sure you hit that like button and check if you're subscribed.
We're constantly bringing you these looks into the films that generate the biggest conversations.
Okay, let's move on to the cast, because they are, across the board, just incredible.
They have to be.
They really do, because we spend so much disjointed time inside their heads. The film's entire success relies on these actors selling their fractured realities. Let's start with Julia Garner as Justine, the teacher of the vanished children.
Garner's performance is just a masterclass in nuance, isn't it?
It really is.
She takes what could easily have been a very tired trope, you know, the emotional, flawed, maybe hysterical female lead, and she makes her entirely sympathetic.
Justine is struggling with intense alcoholism. She's clearly ill-suited to navigate a police investigation. She's an emotional wreck.
But she's the one who remains fundamentally motivated. She is caring, and she's fueled by this genuine need to solve the mystery and protect Alex, the one student left.
Her struggle with alcohol, which we know from Cregger, was intended to be a thematic anchor. It isn't just a character flaw. It's this constant, visible source of her vulnerability.
You feel it in every scene she's in.
You do. Even during those high-action moments, like her frantic, panicked run when she's being chased by the possessed principal, Marcus, in the convenience store.
That scene is so intense.
It is, but Garner keeps the performance grounded. Her yelling at the clerk, her sheer confused terror, it feels utterly real. It's grounded in her desperation and her deep vulnerability.
Then you have Josh Brolin as Archer Graff. He is the emotional sledgehammer of the film.
He absolutely is.
He provides that incredibly heavy, raw, and grounded presence that the audience desperately needs to anchor all the supernatural chaos.
Brolin delivers some truly all-timer moments that just perfectly encapsulate the film's genre blend.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned it before we started. That famous scene where he wakes up from that terrifying, surreal dream sequence.
The one with the gun in the sky.
Yes, and his only line is this raw, confused, and utterly human, "What the fuck?"
That line went viral instantly.
Because it's the perfect encapsulation of the audience's reaction to the entire movie.
It is. It's the ultimate human response to surreal, incomprehensible horror. It just grounds the scene immediately.
And his performance wasn't lost on others in the industry. The sources mentioned that David Fincher reportedly called a different, extremely profane line that Brolin delivers.
The one aimed at Principal Marcus.
Yeah, he called it the greatest line in R-rated history.
Brolin's performance just consistently heightens the surrealism and the dark comedy, but he keeps the stakes brutally relatable.
Let's talk about the cop, Paul, played by Alden Ehrenreich. He is just operating under such intense pressure. He's the official law enforcement proxy, but he's drowning in his own chaos.
He is the explicit homage to John C. Reilly's conflicted cop character in Magnolia.
You can really see that.
Paul is defined by his professional pressure, his intense alcoholism, and his secret affair with Justine. The film's choice to have his chapter define him by his personal failings is just brilliant.
It forces you to constantly reassess his intentions.
Constantly. You realize his early encounters, especially with Justine, are fundamentally skewed by his own guilt, his desire, and his just rapidly deteriorating professional ethics.
It's a very subtle performance that requires you to stay engaged as a viewer.
It does.
So let me ask you, if you were Paul, faced with that level of community pressure and your own personal life just unraveling, do you think you would have been able to spot the supernatural threat?
That's a great question. And I think, given the thematic emphasis on self-destruction, the answer has to be a firm no.
Really?
Paul is already consumed by his own personal demons long before the witch even appears. He's just incapable of seeing the outside, objective truth because his internal life is a complete catastrophe.
Which is why his chapter feels so dark and morally compromised.
Exactly.
Okay, but then we get to the necessary dose of dark humor.
Delivered by Austin Abrams as James, the homeless, drug-addicted teen.
James is the nervous, high off his rocker comic relief that the movie just desperately needs at certain points.
But he's more than that. He serves a crucial, specific narrative function. He's the one who discovers the location of the missing kids and the witch's lair.
And his negotiations with Paul, the cop, for the reward money. They are genuinely hilarious.
So funny. He's bruised, he's terrified, he's clearly under the influence.
And he's trying to maintain control of the conversation, asking the cop over and over how he knows the cop won't just claim the $50,000 reward for himself. It's an absolute highlight.
He is a force multiplier for the dark comedy. Whether he's delivering that manic dialogue or just being physically thrown around the shack by the enraged Archer.
James provides those vital bursts of necessary levity.
He really does. And finally, the entire second half of the film, the emotional and narrative payoff, it all rests squarely on the young shoulders of Carrie Christopher.
As Alex, the sole student who didn't vanish.
Alex is just phenomenal. He's the innocent child forced into an adult caretaker role just by necessity.
Because of the parasitic Aunt Gladys.
Right. His whole character arc is about forced maturity.
And we see these specific, clever details that show his problem-solving skills. The sources point them out.
The scene where he switches to buying pull-tab soup cans?
Yes, because he struggled to operate the can opener to feed Gladys. It's such a small, perfect detail.
And his meticulous, careful collection of his classmates' name tags and belongings.
Which, it turns out, are needed for the counter-ritual.
Those little details just speak volumes about the burden that's been placed on him. He transforms from an average kid into this resilient survivor, like overnight.
And that reliance on a child actor to hold such complex emotional and narrative weight, that's a huge risk.
A massive risk.
Yeah.
But Christopher absolutely nails it.
He really does.
So let's talk about the stylistic and tonal high-wire act that Kreger is performing here. This movie is just a seamless, volatile blend of sustained tension, abrupt, shocking gore.
And often laugh-out-loud dark comedy.
Yeah. And Kreger's background is in comedy. He was part of the sketch group The Whitest Kids You Know.
And that comedic rhythm is essential to this film's success. It is exceptionally difficult to put humor into high-stakes horror without accidentally undercutting the danger.
But he somehow succeeds.
He does.
The director explained how he achieved that balance. He said it was about allowing the characters to behave authentically in their increasingly insane situation rather than, trying to force jokes or wink at the camera.
That authenticity is what makes Archer repeatedly throwing James around the shack both brutal and kind of funny.
It's driven by pure, unhinged paternal rage, which is a believable response in that moment of crisis.
You see in the finale, too, that final chase scene involves this manic, high-speed flight that borders on pure, goofy, physical comedy.
All while these shocked neighbors are just outside watching the chaos unfold.
Treating it like a surreal piece of neighborhood entertainment. It's terrifying, but the neighborhood's reaction to the insanity is hilarious because it feels so realistically absurd.
The look of the film is also crucial to establishing that mood. The cinematography, which was handled by Larkin Seipel, is just masterful in building that sustained dread.
The visuals feel so cold.
Cold, isolating, and perpetually autumnal in this suburban setting. It perfectly mirrors the emotional temperature of the community.
And if we're going to talk about dread, we have to dedicate serious time to the sound design and the score.
Oh, absolutely.
The music was a collaborative effort between Ryan Holiday, Hayes Holiday, and Greger himself. And the production detail here is fascinating.
They started composing the score at the same time as the editing process,
They set up their scoring suite right next to the edit room.
which meant they used minimal temp tracks, which are usually just placeholder music. Instead, they built the sound organically, right alongside the picture edit.
So the score isn't just laid on top of the finished movie.
No, it's truly woven into the psychological fabric of the story. It enhances the mystery and that collective longing for answers that everyone in the town feels.
Is there a specific piece of the score that stands out from the sources?
The most frequently cited piece is the track that was created for the flight.
That's the scene where we finally see the synchronized running of the children.
Yes.
Yeah.
The composer described that piece as feeling like, and this is a great description, Ride of the Valkyries meets Basinski's Disintegration Loops.
Wow. That is a highly specific reference that suggests some real layers of intellectual weight. For our listeners who might not be familiar, can you unpack those two references?
Absolutely. So, Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it. It's synonymous with epic scale, with grandeur, impending battle. It's a massive, sweeping piece of classical music.
Right.
Contrast that with William Basinski's Disintegration Loops, which are famous for being created from these old tape loops of orchestral music that were literally deteriorating as they played.
So they result in these agonizing, distorted, and increasingly fragmented sounds?
Exactly. So the sound for the flight is meant to feel epic in scale signaling the huge mythic nature of this tragedy. But at the same time, it's distorted, it's decaying, and it's deeply unsettling.
Capturing the agony of the children's fate.
That duality perfectly reflects the film's tone. It's a grand, mythic horror epic, but it's told through this lens of fragmentation and psychological decay. The sound is just profoundly unsettling.
It suggests something vast and powerful that is, at its core, fundamentally broken. Okay, now we get to dive into the core intellectual mission of this whole thing, unpacking the meaning.
The big why.
Yes. Many viewers saw this as an allegory for, generalized societal chaos, COVID paranoia, generational trauma. But Kreger has been very explicit in his director commentary about a specific personal inspiration.
He confirmed it in his source interviews. He said the film is a personal story that was largely inspired by growing up with alcoholic parents.
And the profound, raw grief he felt after the death of his close friend and colleague, Trevor Moore.
So therefore, addiction and its fallout, the way it turns caretakers into victims and victims into caretakers, that is the confirmed central theme.
And once you have that lens, the entire movie just snaps into sharp focus.
Everything clicks into place.
Every adult character's struggle is reframed. It's not just personal chaos, it's a symptom of a communal pathology.
And this is where the antagonist, Aunt Gladys, played so chillingly by Amy Madigan, she functions as this powerful, unambiguous metaphor for addiction itself.
She is a parasite.
A total parasite, draining the life and vitality from her victims, the children, and turning the adults who should be protectors into just helpless collateral damage.
She places them under her spell using that specific chilling blood ritual.
With a lock of hair or a personal belonging wrapped around a twig, which she then snaps.
And that ritualistic snapping of the twig, it feels almost identical to the moment an addict finally gives in, that moment of surrender to the vice.
And her effect on the town is total paralysis.
Yeah.
You look at Alex's parents, just rendered catatonic and useless. They were victims of her consumption.
Exactly. And Gladys forces Alex, the child, into the role of a caretaker.
He has to keep her fed with soup. He has to keep her secrets, even as his own support structure is collapsing around him.
This is instantly recognizable as the dynamic that's often imposed on children who grow up in homes grappling with severe addiction. The child is forced to grow up immediately to manage the sickness.
And the language she uses is another one of those hidden clues about her enduring nature.
What, that she calls her illness consumption?
Yes. The source material points out that consumption is an archaic, anachronistic term for tuberculosis that largely went out of common usage by the 1920s.
So it's not just a quirky choice of words.
No, it's a subtle clue suggesting that Gladys is not a modern figure. She is a witch who's been active for centuries, constantly needing to recover and replenish by placing new young victims under her spell across different generations.
She is the eternal recurrence of societal vice.
And if you look beyond Alex's direct family, the thematic connections are just everywhere. Nearly every major adult character is struggling with self-destructive vices.
Justine is consumed by alcohol. Paul is dealing with infidelity and alcohol. Archer is paralyzed and nearly destroyed by his own self-destructive consuming grief.
The addiction is the weaponized force in the community, and it's shattering its foundation.
There's even that potent piece of foreshadowing.
The cordyceps fungus.
Yes. Before Gladys infects Principal Marcus, he and his partner are shown watching a nature documentary on the infamous zombie ant fungus.
The fungus that manipulates an ant to lose all control over its muscles, turning it into a mindless puppet.
And that subtle detail foreshadows exactly what happens to Marcus when he becomes a weapon against Justine.
Gladys takes control of his body and manipulates him against the community, paralleling the way addiction takes control of an individual and turns them against their loved ones. Just a beautifully layered piece of visual storytelling.
But we have to discuss the other major thematic controversy.
The school shooting allegory.
The persistent fan theory that this film is an allegory for school shootings.
And this theory gained a lot of traction. It's not hard to trace the evidence, really.
Well, the title is literally Weapons.
The plot revolves around the disappearance of an entire classroom of children. There's a visible memorial for the missing kids. The overall imagery is just steeped in societal fear.
And the most striking, the most undeniable piece of evidence supporting this theory is in Archer's nightmare sequence.
The floating AR-15.
There is a massive floating AR-15 looming over the town and his home, a gigantic, impossible visual symbol of American gun violence. That is a deliberate, highly charged image.
It is. However, we have to be impartial here and report the director's official stance.
Right.
The source material is very clear. Kreger firmly denies this was his primary intention. He explicitly stated he prefers the ambiguity of it, letting the audience interpret the symbol for themselves.
He even confessed he doesn't fully understand the gun imagery himself, claiming he just visualized it in a meditative state.
And that directorial ambivalence is what a lot of audiences found frustrating. To put such a potent, gigantic, and politically charged symbol in the center of your film's nightmare logic.
And then to claim no clear authorial intent.
It felt evasive to some viewers who desperately wanted a concrete answer about what that image meant.
Regardless of his intent, the symbolism goes even deeper, hidden within the specific time of the vanishing, 2:17 a.m.
And Kreger confirmed this time was chosen for very layered, non-random reasons.
Okay, what are those layers? What is the significance of 2:17?
So commentators and fans have identified three key layers. First, it's a direct nod to Stephen King's horror mythology.
The Shining.
Specifically The Shining.
Yeah.
The truly haunted room in the book, the source of all the evil, was room 217. It's a direct, undeniable horror Easter egg.
A perfect piece of genre shorthand.
The second layer is biblical. Matthew 2.17 references the massacre of the innocents.
Herod ordering the execution of all the young male children in Bethlehem.
And given that the film features a missing child named Matthew, the parallel involving innocents being targeted by an inescapable evil is chilling and very hard to ignore.
Wow. So you've got Stephen King in the Bible. That sets a pretty high bar for thematic dread.
And the third layer is purely political and maybe the most startling.
Okay.
217 was the exact vote count that passed a U.S. House bill banning assault weapons in 2022.
Whoa.
So whether Kreger intended all three or whether that political connection just emerged by accident after the timestamp was chosen, the sources confirm that these three interpretations are now woven into the DNA of the film's time.
Making the reading of societal violence inescapable, even if the director maintains his ambiguity?
Exactly.
You see how the density of this material really requires this kind of focused breakdown. You are getting so much more than just a surface-level review here. And if this analysis is hitting the mark for you, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe.
Okay, so let's move from all that thematic depth to some of the fun details that prove Kreger is actively building a cohesive horror universe.
The shared universe stuff, I love this.
There are specific, confirmed Easter eggs linking weapons right back to his breakout film, Barbarian.
This is the kind of detail that turns casual viewers into, franchise devotees. Kreger is definitely leaning into the shared monster universe idea. What's the biggest link?
The biggest link was actually provided through the film's own marketing and its ancillary sources. There was a website, maybrookmissing.com, which provided these fictional, in-universe news updates about the missing kids.
Okay.
And within that site, there was a specific linked article titled, Underground Prison Discovered in Rental Home.
Oh, that is absolutely undeniable.
It is.
That title is a direct and specific reference to the address and the central, horrifying plot of Barbarian, to the mother's subterranean lair beneath the rental house.
And there's a much more subtle, almost microscopic food connection.
Ooh.
In Weapons, Principal Marcus and his partner are shown eating hot dogs.
Okay.
If you check the deep ancillary material and the hidden website lore for Barbarian, there was a cryptic reference to a hot dog recipe.
No way.
It suggests Kreger is using these certain minor motifs to thread his world together, linking his monsters and his mythology.
That shows a real investment in creating this interconnected, monstrous landscape that exists just beneath the surface of seemingly normal America. But getting this film made was apparently a logistical and dramatic nightmare. It went through some major production turbulence.
The first major hurdle was the sheer scale of the casting changes. Because the film was scheduled during the 2023 Hollywood strikes, the initial stars had unavoidable scheduling conflicts.
Right. Who was it originally?
Pedro Pascal was originally set to star as Archer.
Wow.
And Renate Reinsve, who got massive acclaim for The Worst Person in the World, was lined up to play Justine.
That would have been a profoundly different movie. But we were lucky that the replacements, Josh Brolin and Julia Garner, were equally fantastic.
Oh, they were. But the drama did not end with casting. The biggest reported controversy revolved around that initial bidding war.
The $38 million deal.
Exactly. New Line won, beating out every other major studio, including Universal and Netflix.
And this is where the industry rumor mill just went into overdrive, involving one of the biggest names in modern horror.
The highly reported rumor is that Jordan Peele, whose Monkey Paw Productions bid aggressively for the project with Universal, he was reportedly pissed about losing the script.
And what gives that rumor serious weight is what happened next.
Shortly after the deal was secured by New Line, Peele abruptly cut ties with his longtime managers, Peter Principato and Joel Zadak.
And the critical detail here is that Principato also happened to be Zach Kreger's manager.
Exactly. The industry consensus was that Peele viewed Kreger as significant competition for that high-concept horror space and was furious about missing out on the script, leading to that dramatic rupture with his management team.
It really highlights the brutal, high-stakes nature of the Hollywood ecosystem.
Movie making is not for the faint of heart.
No kidding. And speaking of controversy, the film also suffered some significant negative social media backlash before anyone had even seen a single frame of it.
The initial trailer.
All centered around that initial trailer release.
That trailer used a very specific, unsettling visual style. It was this crude, 2D, children's Crayola drawing animation style to depict the kids vanishing at 2.17.
But sharp-eyed social media users quickly pointed out noticeable inconsistencies. Confusing lines, objects morphing illogically.
Things that strongly suggested the common mistakes you see in early generative AI art.
And the allegation just exploded. The studio had allegedly used AI to create that animation, and the backlash from artists and the horror community was immediate and fierce.
Focusing on the ethical implications of using AI over human animators.
The reaction was so intense and so damaging to the film's pre-release image that the studio quickly removed and replaced the trailer with regular live-action footage.
And while it was never officially confirmed if AI was used for the whole thing or just to smooth out the frames, the controversy definitely set a contentious tone before the film even hit theaters.
Finally, let's talk about the ending, because Kreger almost delivered something much, much bleaker to the audience.
The sources confirm that the original cut of the film ended with a silent, more ambiguous final shot of Matthew, Archer's son, after the witch is finally defeated.
So it was just supposed to leave the audience hanging, contemplating the lingering damage?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But test audiences found that ambiguity too jarring, too negative, and ultimately just unsatisfying.
So the famous child narrator's voiceover was a necessary concession to audience demand for resolution.
Yes. Kreger added that voiceover from the child narrator to provide essential closure and context for the lingering trauma. It explains the aftermath.
That the children were freed, but Alex's parents remained catatonic.
Yeah, Alex eventually moved away, and some of the children eventually started speaking again. It provides a definitive sense of resolution, even while making it clear that the trauma and scars are permanent.
And looking ahead, Kreger is clearly not finished with this world. He's been discussing a potential expansion.
He is. He mentioned being excited about a potential sequel, but specifically he's been in talks with Warner Bros. About a prequel. A prequel centered entirely on the lore, history, and origin story of Aunt Gladys.
Given Amy Madigan's chilling, understated performance and the rich, centuries-long history of consumption hinted at in the film, that breakout antagonist definitely warrants the whole focus.
It suggests Kreger sees Gladys as the mother figure of this entire monstrous universe he's building.
That would be incredible.
So after distilling all the sources and the critical analysis, I think the core strength of Weapons remains its structural audacity.
I would agree with that.
Kreger successfully took the concept of the ensemble film, intentionally made it messy through subjective truth and unreliable narrators, and he blended horror, mystery, and dark comedy in a way that truly demands intellectual engagement from you.
You leave the theater hooked.
You do. And you're less hooked by neat, solved answers and far more by the lingering, unsettling questions it poses about the chaos and addiction that just fester right beneath the immaculate surface of suburbia.
It is a polarizing, messy, but fundamentally memorable experience that demands discussion. And for modern horror, I think that is the highest possible compliment.
Absolutely.
It stays in your head long after you realize that the answers aren't as neat as you might have wanted, but instead they reflect the subjective messiness of the characters themselves. And we want to hear what you think.
Before you click away, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and engage with us down in the comments. We really want to know your take on Kreger's method.
So here is the question for you to answer in the comments. The director says the plot holes are intentional because the story is subjective, told through unreliable narrators. If you had to choose just one character whose perspective you fully trusted, who you believed was seeing the events as they actually happened, without personal bias or addiction, who would it be and why? Let us know.
This was Max and Mia on Movies.
See you next time at the movies.